So today I'll tell you about keys. So our first key is primary key. What primary key is? It's a unique identifier in a table. Fire in a table. And it can't be null. And each table has one primary key. So let me explain you all these things. So for example, in a classroom, we have three students with name Pragya. So if I want to distribute the mark sheet to Pragya, how can I identify which Pragya's mark sheet it is? By their roll number, right? So what roll number is? Roll number cannot be null, can't be null, and it's unique for every student, right? And it's unique for everybody. So roll number will act as a unique identifier for all these girls, right? So here roll number is our primary key. So let me explain it with the help of our syntax. Let me comment out it first. So I'm using my class 5 database. I'm creating one table, create table STU. Here ID is our primary key, comma, name, varchar, many. So let me run it first. Yeah, let me insert something. Insert into stu values. So in values, as we know, we have given ID as our primary key, right? So we have to give our value unique as well as not null. Unique and not null. So let me give name Pragya. If I give the ID same, like if I give Pragya here, again, as you know, primary key can only have, excuse me guys, so can have unique, can have unique things, right? So if I'll run it, I'll get an error. So you can see violation of primary key is written there. But if I write 2 here, then it will run. And if I'll give null value here, again it will give an error because primary key can't be null. Violation of primary key constraint is given here. So I think you get to know what primary key is. Primary key is a unique identifier and it can't be null. Null here. It can't be null. See, cannot insert the value null into column. Okay. So let us move towards foreign key. What foreign key is? So it references to primary key in another table. Another table. What it does, it establish link between two tables. Let me explain you with examples only. So maintain consistency, and relationship. So what do I mean by foreign key? Let me explain you right now. Let me comment it first. Okay. So what foreign key does? Foreign key establish a relationship between primary key between two tables. For example, I have two tables A and B. So if my A is our primary key and B is my foreign key, then if in primary key I have the numbers, excuse me guys, I have the numbers 1, 2, and 3. Then in foreign key, we can only have the numbers among them. Like we can have 1, we can have 1 again. It can be repeated. We can have 2, but we can't have 4. Can't have it. Can't. But we can have 3. So what foreign key does? Foreign key maintain the relationship between these two tables. We can only have the values that are in the primary key, and we can also have null. So what foreign key does? It establishes the relationship. We can only have the values that are in the primary key. It can be repeated and null. Let me explain you by using it. Let me create, first I'll create table stu1 and student ID in, comma, I'm using my student ID as a foreign key. Student, let me use bracket, student ID. Then I'll use the word references. References. After references, I'll use the table name in which my primary key was, and then my column. So if I run it, I've written the spelling of references wrong. So if I'll run it now, let me uh, select star. Let me run my first table. It's two. So what are the values we are having in our primary key? So we have our ID as 1 and 2. So if I'll something, insert into to 1 values, if I insert 1, then it will not give an error. If I'll use 1 again, then also it will not give an error. If I use 2, as we have 2 in our primary key, we can use 2. We'll use 2 again, 2 again. Will not get any error. See, I'm not getting any error. If I'll run it, you can see. On it, you can see I can use multiple uh, things that are in the primary key. But if I write 3 here, it will give me an error. Why it will give me an error? Because I don't have 3 in my foreign key. The insert statement conflicts with the foreign key constraint. But I can use null also. Of minute, let me use bracket first. I can use null also. It will not give me an error. So what foreign key does, it establishes a relationship between two tables. No matter if we put any null value or the values can be repeated also, but it can't be different from the primary key. So that's the concept of primary key and foreign key. Let's move to another key, that is unique key. So what unique key is? Unique key means that all values must be unique. No repetitions should be there. So if I make a table, create table A, and I'm using my ID as int unique. So what that means? What? So what that means, if I insert some value, then all values must be unique. It can be null. Insert into A1, you can see I can put different values or null values. I can put different and null values, but I can't put same values as I've used unique constraint. I can't use same value because I have used unique constraints. So let's move to another key, that is composite key. What composite key is? So when we have more than one unique identifier, what that means, when we have more than one primary key in a table. Let me explain it. Like, let me create A2, A2, and I'm using ID int, comma, of phone number, int, comma, comma, I'm using both of these as my primary key, comma, phone number. So if I run it, as you can see, I've used both of these as my primary key. So I'm getting some error. Let me see what error I'm getting. Okay, I haven't used the bracket here, closing bracket here. So yeah. So what composite key is, when we have more than one primary key in a table, then it is composite key. But as I explained you again, that we can only have one primary key in a table, right? So If somebody asks you in an interview, how many primary key we can enter in our table, then you have to answer one. Then you can also say if we have more than one primary key in a table, then it will become a composite key. It will not remain a primary key anymore. So that's why we can only have one primary key in a table. So let me tell you what candidate key is. Candidate key. Candidate key is uh, when keys have potential to become a primary key. So if I create a table A3 and I'm using ID int, comma, name, varchar 20, email, varchar 20. So I'm creating this table. As you can see, I have two columns that can be primary key. Like my ID can be unique and not null. It can be my primary key. Similarly, email can also be my primary key. Like email cannot be null, and it is unique for everybody, right? So my two columns can be primary key, but I'll make one my primary key, right? So what that means? That means if we have more than one column, if we have more than one column in our table that can be primary key, then it is a composite key. But I have made my ID as a primary key. So I think you get it. Let me explain you again. As you can see, my two columns can be primary key as they both cannot be null and they are unique for every student, right? But I have to make only one. So I have made my ID as a primary key. So what that means? That means all primary key is a candidate key, but all candidate key isn't primary key. As you can see here, both of these can be a primary key. Both have the potential to be primary key. So these are our primary key, but we have made our ID as primary key. So our ID is our primary key as well as candidate key, but our email is only a candidate key. It has the potential to become a primary key, but it isn't a primary key. So I think this much is clear to you. Thanks. That's all for today.